Hi there, it's Mrs. Scarple. We're going to take a look at section 4.2, writing equations in point-slope form. So if you recall, y equals mx plus b is the slope-intercept form, and it gets its name because we know the slope of the line and the y-intercept of the line. The point-slope form, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, gets its name because, again, we can identify the slope, that's the m, and we can identify a point that the line is passing through. That's the x1 and the y1 that we find in our equation. So the x1, y1 that is a point that the line is passing through. The m is the slope of the line. So when we have the equation y minus 2 equals 1/2 times x minus 3, we know that the slope of that line is going to be 1/2, and that a point on that line is 3, 2, because the x1 value in our equation is 3, and the y1 value in our equation is 2. So let's practice writing an equation in point-slope form. So if we have the equation, or we're going to write an equation that passes through the point 1, 6, so 1 will be the x1 value, 6 will be the y1 value, and we have a slope of negative 1/2, so that's our m value. Because we're writing it in point-slope form, you want to remind yourself of what point-slope form looks like. So that's y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, and then you substitute the values. So y minus, substitute for y1, the 6, equals, substitute for m, the negative 1/2, times x, subtract, substitute for x1, the 1. And we have our equation in point-slope form for the line with a slope of negative 1/2 and the point 1, 6. We can also do this when we're given 2 points, whether the 2 points are on a graph like we have here, or if they're just given to us. The first thing you need to do is calculate the slope. If it's on a graph, you could just count the rise over run. If you're just given 2 points, you need to calculate the change in y over the change in x, which with the formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we have 6 subtract negative 6, and we have 4 subtract negative 2. So subtract negative is a positive. That's 6 plus 6 over 4 plus 2. So 12 over 6 simplifies to 2. And if we check this, just looking at our graph, let's count our rise. Keep in mind that the scale on this graph is by 2, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Went up 12, so using our points, we had a rise of 12. And it's going to the right 2, 4, 6. We also had a run of 6. 12 over 6 is 2. The next thing you want to do is pick a point. You can pick either point. Generally, I would pick the point that has positive values, but I want you to also see that we can do this with negative values. So I'm going to use the point negative 2, negative 6. That also corresponds with my x1, y1 that I used in calculating my slope. And I'm going to write my equation in point-slope form. So we have y minus, y1 is negative 6, equals our slope we said is 2, times x minus x1 is negative 2. And don't be afraid to identify that negative 2 is x1 and negative 6 is y1. Now this looks a little bit messy because of the multiple minus signs and all of the parentheses, so we can clean this up. We said a subtract negative is plus, so y plus 6 equals 2 times x plus 2. So you've probably noticed by now that when we write an equation in point-slope form, the signs on x1 and y1 in the equation are opposite of what they are in our point for our graph. So for our point, the x1 and the y1 were both negative, but in our equation, the sign for x1 and y1 are both positive. And that's because in our equation, we could read this as y and the opposite of y1, x and the opposite of x1. So that's how that is working out. Now, because my directions did ask for slope-intercept form, I am going to take my point-slope form, and I'm just rewriting it here so you can see what I'm going to be doing with this equation, and solve for y. Get y by itself so that it's in slope-intercept form. So I need to distribute the 2. Y plus 6 equals 2x plus 4. Subtract the 6, and we have y equals 2x minus 2. And let's compare our equation with the graph. We know that the slope is supposed to be 2. We calculated it both by the formula and counting it on the graph. This equation says my y-intercept should be minus 2. If I look at my graph and remember that my scale is by 2's, my line does go through negative 2 on the y-axis. So we have done our work correctly. So we started by finding the slope. We then picked a point to write our line in point-slope form, and then all we did was distribute and subtract to get y by itself to write the equation in slope-intercept form.